Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. It is Saturday, so we're doing another financial education video. We also shoot portfolio review videos on Wednesdays. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Paul Novak and I absolutely love saving, investing, spending, and talking about money, and that's what we're going to do today. This week we are talking about the amazing topic of dividends. Getting constant payments for stocks and holdings that you have. Who doesn't love that? And my content is geared towards beginners. So many of you probably know what a dividend is, but don't truly understand what they are and exactly how they work. That's where I come in. And if you find these videos helpful, I'd always encourage you, smash that like button and subscribe. Comments are always welcome. If you've got any questions or topic recommendations, we respond back to all comments. And if you're interested in saving or investing, I've got a ton of links posted in the description below. With that comes free stocks, different promotions, and the only thing that I've got posted down there is stuff that I actually use myself. So I never recommend something that I don't believe in myself. I'm not affiliated with anybody, and literally the stuff that I go over in my videos is only content that I actually use and support myself. And with that being said, let's get into it. So let's keep this simple. This does not need to be complicated. A dividend is nothing more than a sum of money that a company pays out to its shareholders based on its profits, and typically those payments are quarterly. They can be yearly, semi-yearly, they can be monthly, but most of the times these dividends are going to get paid out quarterly. And one of the first questions I get asked by beginners, because they get excited about the dividends, is if I hold on to a stock or if I hold on to an index fund, am I guaranteed a dividend payment? And the answer to that question is no. So again, in the spirit of keeping this simple, there's really only three options a company has when it comes to its profits. The first option would be it could pay out its entire profits as dividends. That's highly unlikely, but it is a possibility. A company could do that. The second option is that a company could take all of its profits, pay out zero dividends, and invest all of its gains back into the company to make it grow. The third option is that a company could keep some of its profits to reinvest back into the company and pay some of its profits out in dividends. That's normally where dividend payments come from. All right, and that's normally when you hear people talk about growth stocks versus value stocks. And I'm going to start with growth stocks. Growth stocks tend to be smaller companies, and those companies tend not to pay dividends. And that's because they're taking their profits that they're making for the year, investing it back into the company, and hoping for very large growth. And where you're making your money when investing in a growth stock, you're hoping that the share price really appreciates and takes off. And an example that I'm going to use is Tesla. Right? So they're not a small company anymore, but if you go back just a couple of years, right, they were a relatively small company and they don't pay a dividend because they're reinvesting all that into the company, and you can see how much their share price has grown. That's what's giving them value. Now, if I go to a value-based company, these companies are generally large companies. I want you to think of Coca-Cola, think of Walmart, right? Very, very large. Those companies are not going to be able to double their profits next year. They're already so large, they don't have as much room to grow. And because of that, their share price doesn't go up as quickly. So that deters people from wanting to invest in a company like them. But what they do to offset that is they pay a dividend to get regular payments out, and that attracts more shareholders to come in, buy their stock, and hold on to the stock. So that's really going to be the difference between your growth companies and your value companies. Your value companies are where you're going to see the dividend payments. All right, so now I'm going to show you how you can tell if the stocks that you hold, or the index funds for that matter, pay a dividend. And I'm just going to go into my brokerage account. What I'm going to show you, you'll be able to find that information on Morningstar, on any real brokerage account. It'll show you this. So if I go into mine, I'll pick one of my favorite companies. You've heard me talk about them a lot, is Plug Power. And when I click on them, and I scroll down here under the stats, you can see the bottom right-hand corner has this stat called dividend yield, or div yield. And you can see that it's just got a dash there. That's letting you know that they do not pay a dividend. Again, Plug Power I would consider a smaller up-and-coming company that's taking all of their profits, sticking it into growing, and hoping that that share price is really going to take off. Now if I go back, and I'm going to look at another company that I really like, this TSM, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing. I'll scroll down here again, same thing, look at the stats, and if you can see, this company looks different. So if you look again, bottom right-hand corner for stats, it says div yield, and it shows 1.23. When you see that number there, you know that this holding is going to pay a dividend. And what I want to show you next is how to calculate these dividend payments. So it's one thing to know that you're going to get a dividend. It's another thing to understand, well, how big is that payment going to be? So as we look on here, I'm just doing a simple calculator in Excel just to show how these payments get calculated. And I'm going to pick TSM. It's one of my favorite companies as of late. So I'll click on this and actually calculate my dividend payment. So as we look here, the market value, I'm just going to pull this right from my Robinhood account, is $1,692.16. And where I'm going to figure out the dividend is I'm going to scroll down here to where it says dividend yield. So I'm going to type this in, and because it's a percentage, I'm going to put 0.0123. Type that in. And now you got to remember, whenever you're looking at dividend yield, it's always going to show your annual payment. So I'm going to take that number and times it by my market value, which says that my dividend payments are going to be $20, but that's annually, and TSM pays out a quarterly dividend. So all I've got to do is take that total and divide it by 4 quarters in a year. And that'll show you that my quarterly dividend payment is going to be $5.20. And if you want to learn more about dividends, a place that I go to is literally this simple. It's dividend.com. I'll place a link to it down below in the description, but it's going to offer a lot of good dividend information. And I'll actually show you the website right here. So if you look here on my screen, and this is a free website, they obviously have a premium version you can pay for. But if I click search, I'm just going to pick a company. Let's do KO, Coca-Cola. If I click on them, it's going to have a lot of information about dividends. I'm going to go here and just click on payout history. No thanks, we'll close that out. But as I scroll down here, it literally is going to have all of the dividends they've ever paid out, and I can literally view the total payout history, right? I don't want to do that for this, but this part I think is really interesting. If you just scroll down to the bottom, it's going to show what their 1-year growth percentage has been, what their 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, and 20-year growth has been. And if you're truly looking for a company with stable dividends, and that's why I picked Coke, you can see they have 59 years of continual dividend payout. And just because a company pays a dividend doesn't mean they always have to pay it out or that they'll continue. Sometimes companies, especially throughout the pandemic, will pause payments, resume them again. I think Coke is probably one of the most stable companies for dividends. So that's why I picked this one to go through. So when it comes to getting dividends, you really have two different options. Right? When those dividends get paid out, you can either take a cash payout, and when you get that cash payout, it's going to come to your brokerage account. You can either take the cash and run, or you can take that money and invest in whatever company you choose. Or the second option, which is what I do, is something called DRIP. And that stands for Dividend Reinvesting Plan. And what that's going to happen if you've got your DRIP set up or turned on, in most brokerages it'll be in your account settings, it means every time you get a dividend payment from a company, it's going to automatically reinvest that dividend back in to just buy more shares of stock. And I do that because over time it continues to compound the interest, and those dividends aren't money that I need right now. And something that doesn't get talked about much, but I think it's important that I cover, because this is one of the most common questions people have, is how are dividends taxed? Right? There's a lot of people out there that might understand what dividends are and how they get paid out, but I don't hear the tax implications talked about very much. So it's something that to me was really important that I cover in this video. And really, there's two different types of taxes with dividends. Either your dividends are going to be qualified dividends, and if they are, you're going to pay lower taxes on them, or non-qualified dividends. And I think of it very similar to capital gains. Your qualified dividends are paid at a lower tax bracket than the non-qualified dividends, and non-qualified dividends are taxed at regular tax rates. The one exception that I'll say to this is REITs, which is real estate trust investments. Those are investments that are, just like they state, they're invested in real estate. Those types of investments pay out 90% of their profits as dividends, but they're always taxed as non-qualified dividends. That's the one kind of exception to this rule. And I really want to keep this geared towards beginners, and I think explaining how a dividend becomes qualified is kind of difficult. So the best way I could think of to do it, to try and keep it simple, is show you guys in picture form, which is what I'm going to do now. All right, so like I stated, we're going to try and keep this as simple as possible. I'm going to go through with a picture of how qualified dividends work. And if I click here, it all starts with this ex-dividend date. And this is really when the company announces that they're going to pay a dividend. That's the date that you need to hold your stock by in order to qualify for the dividend. From this point, we got to go back 60 days. Right? So they announce that they're going to pay it. You've got the stock. You're going to get it paid on that day. We work 60 days backwards, and that's the starting point. From there, we've got to go back another 121 days. Now, if you hold the stock 60 days out of those 121 days, that's when you qualify for a qualified dividend. So like I stated, this is not easy to explain. The best way I knew how to do it was to put it in picture form, and that is what ultimately will qualify you for that different dividend tax. All right, so again, trying to keep this simple, I just showed the illustration, but I think another thing to think about is if you're getting a dividend payment, by the time that second payment comes around, just how that illustration showed, there is a very high likelihood that your dividend is already made it into qualified status. For sure, by the time you're getting your third quarterly dividend payment, provided we're talking quarterly, you can be well assured that you're going to be into qualified dividend status. And the next thing I really wanted to talk about is some of the positives or things that I like about dividends. I started my portfolio, if you've watched my other videos where I talk about I was going after dividends and trying to get dividend stocks. And one of the biggest things I like is you can get paid without ever selling your shares of stock, right? So if you truly had a portfolio big enough, you could literally just live off the dividends and keep your stocks at all times. And to me, that was something that I really liked. The other part is it definitely helps me mentally when investing. So I know that even if my share prices are going down, right, and the market's starting to crash, I still have those dividend payments coming in. And if you got $1 million portfolio and your overall portfolio had a 4% dividend yield with the stocks that were in there, you could literally make $40,000 a year off of just your dividends. So all of those things to me were really, really exciting. All right, so dividends sound pretty cool. And to be honest, I really do like getting dividends, but I will say dividends are not something that you should go chasing. And just because your holding pays a high dividend doesn't mean that it's a good investment. You should not just go out there chasing dividends. And I'm going to give one example. Obviously, it's a pretty extreme example, but I'm doing that to prove my point. So if you wanted to invest in a company with high dividends, one of the companies that has some of the highest dividends out there is ExxonMobil. Right? Their dividend yield right now is paying over 6%, which is really, really good. If you would have held ExxonMobil over the last 5 years, while you'd be getting that 6% dividend yield, your overall value of your investment in share price would have dropped by over 30%. That would not have been a very good investment. On the flip side of that, if you would have put that same amount of money in Amazon 5 years ago, you would have got a dividend yield of 0%, so no dividends. But Amazon's share price has gone up over 455% over the last 5 years. So I think whenever you're investing money, right, your goal is to try and make money. And if you just go after chasing dividends, you could actually be investing in companies that are losing you money. So if I go back and look at that example, which company would you have rather held 5 years ago? ExxonMobil and rode it out through the dividends, or Amazon and seen what the growth would have been? Well, the answer obviously would be Amazon, but that again just goes to show you, do not chase the dividends. Hopefully you all found this information helpful and learned some stuff about dividends. If you did, I'd encourage you to smash that like button and subscribe. As I stated earlier, I've got a lot of different links below for you guys to get started if you're interested in saving or investing. I want to thank you guys all for watching this week. We'll be back here next Saturday to do more financial education. And remember, on Wednesdays we do our portfolio review. And I hope to see you guys back here next week where we're going to talk more about saving, investing, and spending money. Have a good weekend.